Well, everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland, my weekly show where I take a deep dive into a particular film. For how deep we'll dive into this 8-minute short film from John Ford. But joining me yet again for this string of John Ford war documentaries is my buddy Jim. Jim, thank you so much for coming on.
Hello, Internet, again.
We're back. There's more John Ford. It's still WW2. But for those who haven't tuned into the show before, we have three segments. We have coming attractions for May 10th, and then we have our feature film Torpedo Squadron, and then we have some recommendations for you. Now, there's basically one big movie coming out this weekend, which I will talk about in a minute because I am super excited about it. Because I cannot resist Apes. But Jim, you pointed out that you were interested in the last stop in Yuma County, and what piqued your interest about it?
Um, Initially, the 310 to Yuma, which was a classic Western remade with Russell Crowe and
Christian Bale
it was Christian Bale,
and
um,
Ben Foster, who
which
almost
was
stole the
pretty
show.
good. Pretty good. Traditionally, I'm not a big fan of Westerns. I've gained an appreciation for the Western in cinema history, in the culture. I moved out west a few years ago, so just being here lets me see them a little bit differently, lets me tap into the sights and sounds and smells that I feel when I'm out in the desert. Um, and then I saw a few actors in here that kind of intrigued me, a bunch of character actors. None of the leads. I've never heard of any of the leads here before. But was his name Richard Brake?
Yep, Richard Brake.
Was in Batman Begins, I think. I think he was
Oh, I
Chill.
think he was.
He was Jim
Oh
Chill.
my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, his face just like pops. I remember him being in that 100%.
And yeah, and then Faison Love was in Elf. That's what
Yes,
I know him from.
which is funny. I know him from The Replacements. He's one of the two brothers, two of the linemen.
Okay.
From that. No, so I did actually get to see this, and the lead is Jim Cummings, as in not the voice actor Jim Cummings, who's like Winnie the Pooh and Tigger and a whole bunch of other people. Jim Cummings, who's starred in Thunder Road, The Wolf of Snow Hollow, The Beta Test. He's a he's a very interesting, quirky kind of lead, and he really fits as like this knife salesman who gets stuck in a situation where he has no business being in. Because I did get to watch this film. I'm not going to say much about it because it hasn't released yet, but it is a tight hour 25-minute thriller.
Nice.
So, and
I've
like
never seen any of those movies that you just mentioned. I don't think I've ever seen Jim Cummings in anything. So this will be
uh,
a first
I
time
would
view for me.
recommend start with Thunder Road.
Oh,
It's very much like a character study,
okay.
and it started as a short film actually, because um the big scene in it is him like having a complete meltdown,
Okay.
giving a eulogy at a funeral, and it is ridiculous.
Was it an
He
indie film? Do you know if it was initially an indie film?
100%.
Yeah.
It's like it's a small film. Like actually all three of those films are small indie films. He it looks like he was in Halloween Kills.
I also
Uh,
didn't see Halloween Kills. Sorry.
uh, I would not recommend anything past, Halloween 2018. Was not the biggest fan of Kills or Ends, but well, it's okay because we're gonna get more Halloween movies because I think Miramax secured the rights to it. So, well, just never ending.
Keep
The
on
only
cranking
thing
that handle. Just keep on filming.
Hey, you know what? The only thing that makes me happy about them making endless Halloween films is so John Carpenter can keep cashing them royalty checks, which
Well
he's happy
deserved.
about too.
Well deserved.
So-
All right. What
but
about you, Jane? Did you want to say one more thing about the last stop in Yuma County?
no, I don't want to give away too much. I think the last thing I was going to say is like it challenges you on like a morality basis, and I
Mhm.
think that's what makes it so interesting. And like, what point do you turn on a character
I think
in
for
a
me, the question is
situation?
going to be how, because the Western has been done so many times. Um, like I always bring up John Wayne. I'm not particularly a fan of John Wayne. Like he made so many movies just being himself that John Wayne became a parody of John Wayne, and it
Yeah.
became um, I don't know, boring. So like we've
This
talked about
is
Deadwood before. You know, I love Deadwood.
yeah,
It just subverts, it tweaks these little things. It
yeah.
uses really tropey characters in some ways, but the dialogue was great and the characters were great. So for me, whether I like the movie or not will depend on how much of a
This
classic
one's
Western it is and how new
definitely
it
a
is.
neo-Western.
Good.
So
Yeah.
like it's a more contemporary film, but like it's basically like a standoff in a diner out in the desert. So
Okay.
like it's that kind of vibe.
Yeah.
I am 100% down for Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I wasn't sure how to feel about this when they announced that they were going to make another one after Matt Reeves and Andy Serkis wrapped up the other trilogy of movies. And they're like, well, this is going to be hundreds of years in the future where like apes have predominantly taken over the planet. And I'm like, okay, that could be interesting with new effects and stuff like that. And then I saw the trailer and I'm like, okay, you have my interest. It's basically like a tyrannical empire, a tyrannical kingdom ruled by this one ape played by Kevin Durand. Uh, from like he was in the show The Strain. Uh,
You're not talking about the basketball player.
so Kevin Durand with a D at the end and not Durant with a T at the end. I
Right.
know it's confusing. For us folks who know both sports and movies. So um it just looks like it has some cool ideas that it could play around with. It's interesting to see like the actual Planet of the Apes now in this modern like CGI motion capture ape world. So it's also like the longest one yet. It's like 2 hours and 25 minutes. I I haven't watched the Maze Runner movies. I read the books. I really like them. It's from the director of those, West Ball or something like that.
Okay.
And so like I don't know how to feel, but we're gonna find out.
Yeah, you're handing
Um
a big franchise over to somebody that's kind of a wild card, right?
I guess he's more of like a
I didn't
safe
see
pick.
any. The only one I saw was the original with Charlton Heston, I think. I don't think I've seen any of the
There
sequels
are
or reboots.
10.
10?
Because there's five original Planet of the Apes movies. Because it's Planet of the Apes, Beneath the Planet of the Apes, Escape from the Planet of the Apes, Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, and Battle for the Planet of the Apes.
Probably like two or three too many.
Then they, yeah, the last one was a made-for-TV movie that looked like it was made for $100, and
Okay.
then they jumped and Tim Burton remade the original Planet of the Apes, which
Mhm.
was not a good idea. I have to give it credit though; the makeup and everything was great, but like, Mark Wahlberg is no Charlton Heston. So, and then like Tim Roth stole the whole entire show, who's the
Hmm.
main villain. And then they did Rise of the Planet of the Apes with James Franco and introduced Andy Serkis as Caesar. And then Dawn and War are incredible because Matt Reeves is amazing.
That's what I've
Um,
heard, yeah. And Andy Serkis is pretty good too, I guess, right?
well, Andy Serkis is like the king of motion capture performances, and
Yeah.
I will stand by this. He deserved an Oscar nomination for playing Caesar in either one of those movies,
Hmm.
but the Academy's not brave enough to say that at this point. Which they just need to expand, stunt category, motion capture category. like performance. They need to do certain things like that. They're really behind the times in some of those stuff.
Hmm.
But anyway, so apes are coming, even more of them. But we're here to talk about Torpedo Squadron, which basically this is an 8-minute film of just really memorializing a group of men who passed away during the Battle of Midway. And then there's a little funeral, like salute at the end. And that's the movie. So if like you describe it, that's it.
That's it.
Obviously, it's like a respectful kind of thing. Like it's basically like the military got John Ford to do it in memoriam video for a bunch of soldiers. Um the only thing that really stuck out to me from like a potentially interesting thing to talk about was some of the drawings they were doing when they were showing some of the clips of the men. Because, like, were they caricatures of Japanese people that they were drawing on these torpedoes?
I
I
thought
don't
that
know.
for a second, and then I was like, oh, maybe they're just not very good artists. They're.
And I'm like, but I guess, Jim, what are your general thoughts on Torpedo Squadron?
I like this more than the Battle of Midway, but I also think that they're kind of companion pieces. Um,
Well, yeah, so this is this is for those who died
yeah,
in like the Battle of Midway kind of thing.
right. So if the Battle of Midway was for the mothers, this is for the soldiers. I
Yeah.
think it's more tasteful. I think it ages better. Uh, Again, I like the name that he includes names of specific service members. I do like that. Um, the soundtrack gives a very similar feel from. Gotta find my notes from the other movie real quick. Red River Valley in Battle of Midway to My Country 'Tis of Thee in this one. So you get the classic tinny like choir that you get in what the Sword and the Stone, like any old movie on that kind of equipment. Um, so the music felt a little propaganda-ish, but the less talking and more just showing of faces, I liked. But I don't know that there's a tone for me that says John Ford made this and John Ford made this. I don't see the through line. And maybe you do because you've been watching a lot of John Ford.
I don't really, because like a lot of the trademark like John Ford isms are interesting and dynamic shots and filmmaking and stuff like that. And neither of these did any of that. Because like
Yeah.
this film is very simple. It's here's a shot of like the memoriam, here's a shot of the soldier, like smiling at the camera or drawing something on like a torpedo. That's basically it. And it's just edit, 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 edit. It's just a montage of
Mhm.
shots of those two cross cutting back and forth. And then at the very end, you have like the gun salute, which I think was a nice touch at the very end, wrapping it up. But no, it's basically like, yeah, somebody knows how to use a camera, and they shot this. And you know, obviously John Ford thought this was more important than, just continuing to make westerns and stuff like that back at home during World War II. And I think like this film is very tasteful and significant. Like, I don't think you're gonna watch this for any kind of entertainment value. It's just more of like it's a time capsule. And
Yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
a interesting memoriam. And they keep it simple.
They do, and I think it works. But like you said, it's just kind of a series of edits, and maybe it speaks to foresight a little bit. I guess we could because nobody knew what was going to happen in the battle, and that not all these men died. One of them apparently lived. I think his name was George Gay. Um, but I guess it sounds better if you say that everybody died, if you're going to memorialize the whole squadron. Um, I was doing a quick dive into the battle. Like you didn't watch this in high school, did you? They didn't show these kind of films in school.
I'm trying to remember back to. I remember having like I had a teacher that I don't think he really wanted to show stuff like this because I recall the one thing I recall most about learning about World War II in high school was my teacher going out of his way to belittle Patton and be like he wasn't important. And we just glorified his significance to the war effort. And then I immediately went home and told my grandfather who fought for Patton, and he was ready to go to the school. So
I think most of the people watching this movie are going to be vets
yeah,
or huge military historian nerds
yeah,
or people with personal connections to those people
yes.
in film.
Hmm.
So it did make me think about. I thought we were going to be watching a movie about submarines. I'm a little ashamed to admit. I didn't realize it was aerial torpedoes. I thought we were talking about submersibles.
Not gonna lie, I kind of figured the same thing too.
Yeah. But both of my grandfathers were engineers working for the Navy, not enlisted men, but engineers working on ships in Pearl Harbor and wherever else. So that uh, it changes a lot of things when you have some kind of a personal connection and it clicks. You're like, oh, these people were real. Like this really happened. Somebody like me is out there who, they're, well, at this point, probably like great grandfather, right? Could have been in this movie. Like that would be so cool if I were just watching a movie like this and my grandfather's name popped up. I'm like, wow, John Ford met my grandfather.
Yeah, I had three family members that I know of that fought in World War II. Because my mom's father, my grandfather, who I grew up with for 20 years living in his house, he fought at the Battle of the Bulge. So, like, he was in Europe. His brother, my great uncle Joe, was island hopping in the Pacific. I don't really know any details about like what battles he was a part of or anything like that, but like he was island hopping. And then my other great uncle apparently volunteered for the war early, even before like we got there. So like he was actually uh with the British in Egypt
Oh,
at El Alamein.
interesting.
So all over the place.
I do
So
have a
they're
great uncle who also fought, and I have his uniform still. I found it in the garage when we were just cleaning stuff out. And I tried it on and it was too small for me. And I'm not a big guy. So I'm guessing he was real young when he signed up to fight in the Navy. But yeah, I like, I mean, my big takeaway from the Battle of Midway was that it was really impersonal to me and kind of insensitive that the Japs were just these enemies that needed to be killed.
yep.
Do Japs in air quotes, please. This one is a little bit more focused and personal and uh, almost respectful of both sides. Unless that cartoon, the caricature you were mentioning, is actually what we thought it might be.
Is debatable. I cannot actually confirm, but I'm just sitting there like that doesn't look great.
But I was
But
going to say the editing. He didn't even do the editing on this movie. It was Robert Parrish, who also edited the last film. So, I mean, on an 8-minute video, I don't know what kind of a fingerprint you can put on something this short and this simple. Um, which, I mean, maybe he shouldn't. It would be a kind of disrespectful to try to show some flash and flair and personal style on something like this, you know?
no. And I think Oscars could probably learn a thing or two about in memoriam from this. Because, like, Kiss, keep it simple, stupid. Because if you watch the Oscars this year, they had a dance, they had Andrea Bocelli and his son singing, and barely focusing on the actual video of the people who passed away. And like this is like very focused. There's their name. This is them. There's their name. This is them. This was about them.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that I think is the most impactful thing about it. So keep it simple, stupid. So I guess Jim, do you have anything else you wanted to add about Torpedo Squadron?
I have a question or two I could ask you, just
Okay.
on tangentially, So there were five directors, Hollywood directors, who went to World War II, and I was going to say they enlisted, but did Ford actually enlist? He was working for the OSS essentially. Anyway, do you know who the five directors are?
Oh,
I was going to give you each name and have you name a movie. I don't think that would be too hard for you.
go ahead.
Okay, let's do this. Number one, William Wyler,
Ben Hur.
uh, and Roman Holiday. I don't think I've ever seen Roman Holiday. I'm just aware of it as cultural phenomenon. John Huston.
He seems like he would be somebody who'd want to go out to the war. Um, just like Treasure of the Sierra Madre and African Queen. If you want to watch an interesting film that's a pseudo biopic about John Huston, that's not like it's not technically him, but it's him,
Okay.
is a white something black heart. What is it? I'm
Hmm.
trying to find it on my wall
Oh, you
here.
own it.
White Hunter Black Heart. It's a Clint Eastwood movie,
Okay.
and
All
he
right.
basically plays the John Huston. The whole reason he wanted to film African Queen was so he could go hunting in Africa. He
Oh,
definitely seems like the kind of person who would want to go off to war.
a Hemingway type. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Two down. Well, three really. We know John Ford,
John
right? So
Ford.
four would be Frank Capra.
That's interesting. It's a wonderful life. He certainly came back with a very different disposition
Yeah.
in
Well,
terms of his films and stuff
he
like
was
that.
not born in the USA, was he?
No. Mm-mm.
No. Interesting. Last one. I don't know much about this guy, but I think you might. George Stevens.
Oh, George Stevens.
He directed a movie called Shane.
I literally was about to say he directed Shade, my namesake.
Which you must
I
have seen. I don't know anything about that movie, but you must have seen it.
well, fun fact, I'm named after it.
No way.
100%. My mom thought Alan Ladd was very attractive,
Okay.
and my baseball coach bought me this
Nice.
because I mentioned I had never watched it. And I remember watching this for the first time and not appreciate it at all. I'm just like, this is a boring old Western,
And I'm much more
but
handsome than this fella.
it is so much more than that though. Like this film has a lot to say, and it's a very uh interesting look at like so now I'm gonna go off on a slight tangent because this
Broke.
film influenced Logan, the last Wolverine film, to the point where at one point in the movie they're watching it. And I had an existential crisis in the middle of the movie. I'm just like, I have I have loved Hugh Jackman's Wolverine for 17 years, And now one of the movies is based off of the movie that I was named after. And I'm just sitting there like, what is going on? My life has come full circle. And it's the classic idea of the dangerous man tries to put his past behind him, but bad people bring it out one last time.
Oh, okay. Right.
Because, it's Unforgiven, it's
Right.
Logan, it's John Wick, it's all of those stories are Shane. Because he's a gunslinger that wants to put that life behind him, that they pull him back in.
Pull him back
So
in.
George Stevens made some good films. That's an interesting group of directors that they got to go help out the war effort. So what
Yes,
was
it
the
is.
other
And
question you had?
those are the five who survived. I don't even know who didn't make it back.
Oh no. That's the thing too. Yeah, you might be out there just directing and stuff like that, but stuff's happening around you. They
Right, right.
die.
And yeah, I wonder how much of this John Ford filmed himself. Um, I don't.
Well,
It's you can't tell like when the camera's in his hands.
I can imagine the sequence in Apocalypse Now where Francis Ford Coppola is playing a director filming the one invasion going on is 100% like targeted at like John Ford-esque directors who went off to war and wanted to be right in the thick of it and stuff like that.
Right.
So I would imagine.
He's intense enough. I don't know if he's. I don't know if he's got that in his nature. He doesn't seem like a violent guy to me. He seems much more cerebral. Coppola.
Well, no, I think it was supposed to be specifically a commentary because like I think he's supposed to be like a John Ford-ish type in Apocalypse Now at that moment where he's like, keep going, yelling at Willard because he's trying to get like good shots and stuff like that.
Yeah. I just changed my mind about my suggestion. I thought it was a book, but it's actually a Netflix series. So that'll be my suggestion when we get to that part of the show.
Well, did you have another question you wanted to ask me? Or are you ready for your recommendation?
No, that was I think yeah, you passed with flying colors that part of the quiz. So let's move on.
So, Jim, what would you like to recommend to everybody?
So I just found out about this today. It's called Five Came Back. It's a documentary on Netflix, and it's
Okay.
about those five directors who we just mentioned.
Interesting.
So, and I haven't seen it. I always find myself recommending things I haven't seen, but it looks interesting. It looks pretty
Miniseries
standard
came out in
documentary style.
2017.
Paul Greengrass and others are going to maybe Leonard Maltin are going to be interviewed and talking over a lot
Yeah,
of photographing from
Spielberg, Del Toro, Coppola, Kasdan, Greengrass. Interesting.
speaking of Coppola. Perfect.
Yep.
Cool. So that's my
Well,
suggestion.
that's going on my watch list. So that is like Meryl Streep narrates it. Interesting.
Oh, cool.
That definitely sounds very interesting.
That could
Now,
work. Yeah.
my first recommendation is something very different, and it's Challengers, one of the sexiest movies about tennis you'll ever watch. This film, it's so funny because I've heard so many people. It's like it's Luca Guadagnino's most mainstream film yet. I'm like, if this is mainstream, then like I don't know what to tell you. Because like this is a menage a trois of toxicity and power struggle and just a giant sexual metaphor of tennis. And it is intense. It is thrilling. The three actors, Zendaya, Josh O'Connor, and Mike Faced, are fantastic. Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross did the score, and
Oh.
it sounds like you're gonna be up in the club, ready to like dance the night away to like
So it's like
this.
industrial, but also modern
It's
as
like
well.
this big thumping kind of like club music. And I remember sitting watching the movie like this is the coolest freaking movie that wasn't directed by Steven Soderbergh. Because like Steven Soderbergh makes the coolest movies. But no, this was intense, and not gonna lie, the tiebreaker, because the whole structure of the film is a three-set tennis match that has flashbacks
Oh,
at
okay.
key points to pull back layers on the this dynamic.
So it's literally
And
a three act production.
exactly, and there's tiebreaker at the end, and it's one of the most visceral, intense sequences I have ever seen from a sports movie.
Wow.
Like Luca Guadagnino went nuts making this movie, and like when I say like sports movies, this doesn't feel like a sports movie because like there's something art house about it. And how many art house sports movies do you know?
I can't
Uh,
name any off the top of my head. Yeah.
Well, now we got one. It's Challengers. So highly recommend. I don't know how a lot of people feel about this, but this is now my number one movie of the year so
Wow.
far. So sorry, Dune. You had a good run. One film I watched off my watch list because I'm doing a special Kate Winslet podcast with my buddies on the Infinity Film podcast is Carnage. It's a Roman Polanski film, so if you could get past that, and watch it, it's there. It's an 80-minute adaptation of a play. And
Hmm.
basically two young boys get in a violent altercation and their parents meet up to try to
Oh,
smooth things over, and it does so well. Who saw that coming? And it's a four-piece in one apartment, and it's the one set of parents are Kate Winslet and Christoph Waltz, and the other set of parents are Jodie Foster and John C. Riley.
John C. Riley's an interesting choice there, I gotta say.
It's even more interesting when you watch the movie, and because his character is the most unexpected,
Okay.
to be honest,
Yeah.
and where that character goes. I was actually pretty shocked with how some of the stuff played out. But I love John C. Riley. I think he's one of the most underappreciated actors
Is it a
working
comedy?
today. No,
Okay.
not at all. Well, that's the thing. John C. Riley is an extremely talented actor, and most people just know him from like dumb shit comedies like Step Brothers and
Right.
Talladega Nights. But like he's in Boogie Nights, he's in Hard Eight, Magnolia. He was in Paul Thomas Anderson's first three films.
Hmm.
And he was in Chicago. Mr. Cellophane is such a sad, just like I feel so bad for his character in that. Um, and John C. Riley can sing, he can dance, he can act, he can be funny, he can do it all.
Mhm.
I think Carnage was an interesting movie. It probably worked better as a play, to be honest, but I think it was a really interesting film. And then one of my films that I rewatched recently for my the Wasteland Vintage Roadshow podcast, which is me celebrating all my favorite movies, was The Grand Budapest Hotel. And
It's a good
I
one.
loved it even more every time I watch it. And honestly, I don't I don't know if I was in a particular mood or something, but it emotionally hit me a lot more than it usually does. But God, I don't know if it's because I used it as one of my quotes for my wedding,
Maybe.
for the table sets, but like when F. Murray Abraham is like, we were happy to hear, at least for a little while. And I'm just like, I'm like, don't make me cry on this Saturday night. It just is like the whole Murray Abraham's such a great actor. He so deserved that Oscar for Amadeus. And just his narration and his character as like older Zero, the lobby boy, is there's just so much emotion to it. And him talking about Agatha, Saoirse Ronan's character, and also God, the fact that Ray Fiennes did not get an Oscar for Grand Budapest Hotel is bullshit.
I don't think I
'Cause,
realized that that was the same actor in Amadeus.
yeah, he's
Speaking
Salieri.
of, speaking of plays that have been made into good movie adaptations.
Oh my God, that Milos Forman made that so cinematic. Like, I can't even imagine that movie not being like a movie. Just the way that he brought that to life. But God, the Grand Budapest Hotel is my peak Wes Anderson. Because like obviously he's been experimenting a lot more with French Dispatch, with Asteroid City, and with his Roald Dahl short film adaptations he did for Netflix. There's a lot more him experimenting, but I feel like Grand Budapest is like this is like him peak. This is Wes Anderson, like in his fully formed Wes Anderson.
You just opened up his brain and took his ideas out as purely as you could. That's it, right?
Who makes a movie that has a four-layered frame narrative? Because the movie opens with a girl reading a book, and then she's reading the book in the voice of Tom Wilkinson, and then Tom Wilkinson's dictating him as a younger man as he turns into Jude Law, who's then listening to F. Murray Abraham recount the story of this whole story, and I'm like, and yet it doesn't feel convoluted, it doesn't feel weird, and it doesn't feel out of place, and you're just like, I was so bought into this.
Right,
And it's just like uh this nesting doll of like
right.
how the story's being told. And the colors are fantastic. It mixes genre. It's a murder mystery, it's a caper. There's like horror thriller elements. That whole sequence with Willem Dafoe stalking Jeff Goldblum in the museum is honestly really creepy, and it
Hmm.
makes me want to see a Wes Anderson haunted house movie.
Ooh, okay. What if it was like, what if it was Clue? What if he redid the movie Clue?
Jim, don't get me excited. Oh my God.
It
Well, you done it.
doesn't need to be redone, though. I think it's fine
I
the way it is.
am making note of this for my next time I'm doing a what if show for my talk show. We're doing Wes Anderson's Clue.
Yeah, I think that'd be fun. I mean, you'd have to
And
really
make
mess
notes.
up to make it unfun, but
Oh my God. That just blew my mind. Now I don't have anything else more to say about Grand Budapest Hotel, but you should watch it. But Jim, thank you so much for coming on and talking movies with me.
always happy to have an excuse to drink a beer and chat movies on a Thursday night. Thanks.
There you go. And thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.